Yeah, well, I've been doing some thinking about things, and you kind of take stock sometimes of your life, and maybe some of this that I'm going to tell you, all you people, will resonate with you on some level. There may be parts of it that does. There may be parts of it that's completely unfamiliar. I think for people my age or older, there's going to be parts of it that do resonate. But basically, what I want to do is I want to explain a little bit about what happened last year. I got, well, I befriended a woman, and that went real bad. And see, for me, now in my hometown, because I was a guy that didn't know his place, basically, I was poor, but I didn't think I was lesser than other people. And you were supposed to think that. In my hometown, if you don't have anything, you're supposed to think that that makes you a lesser person. And you're supposed to know your place. So when people would overstep with me, when people would bully me, and so on, I'd stand up to them. And that didn't go over well. And I could stand up to them. I was a tough nut, and I could stand up to them, and I did. And I got into some bad run-ins with a few people, and of course I got into some bad run-ins with the law, too, because our police department was really corrupt, and they tended to overstep, and they tended to bully, and most people accepted it. I didn't. I didn't go along with corruption and bullying, and I had a higher expectation of the police than I would have from a street thug. I expect crap from a street thug. I expect the police to be of a higher, um, I guess I expect police to be of a higher morality or a higher elevation than that, even though I know that's often not the case. Still, I think when you put on that uniform, that you're making a pact with society. You're making a pact with the people. And you have obligations, and the people have obligations too. You got obligations to them, they got obligations to you. And as long as you keep up your end of the pact as an officer, as long as you keep up your end of the agreement, then the people are bound to keep up their end of the agreement, and that includes me. I'm bound by that too. But when you go off script as an officer, when you start doing things that are outside of the arrangement, outside of the pact, and things that are abusive towards the people you have the pact with, towards the citizens, towards the public, well, then I want to hold you to account. And I certainly don't want to go along with you. I don't want to agree that you have a right to do that because you wear the uniform. In fact, I would say the opposite. When you put the uniform on, you're agreeing not to do that. You're agreeing not to be a criminal. You're agreeing not to be a thug. You're agreeing not to overstep your authority. And so, you're agreeing not to enforce your personal opinion or your personal preferences as if they are the law. That's basically it. And our police had a tendency to do that. Most of them did. There were a few decent ones, but most of them had a tendency to do that. Anyway, a lot of bad rumors spread about me, and I became a pariah. People didn't like me because I was like that, and I became a pariah. People spread all kinds of horrible rumors, really evil rumors about me that weren't true. But still, they stuck, and the fact that, the more people that say these things, the more believable they are. And the more believable they are, the more people will say them. And it's just a vicious circle. And so these rumors gain traction. They become powerful forces in your life, even though they're unjustified and they're untrue. So basically, in my case, I was not a hot commodity. And, you know, I could not get that kind of affection from a woman, the kind of affection that a woman would have for a man. I could sometimes get the kind of affection that a woman would have for a child. They'd look at me like I was, just some poor soul or whatever, that maybe needed to be listened to or whatever, but they wouldn't look at me as if I was a man. But really, I was a man, and that was really hard on me, and women would get mad at me if I showed any interest in them, and in many cases they'd even say it that made them feel violated. That to know that I'm interested in them that way. I had a few of them tell me they felt like I had raped them just by expressing an interest, by letting them know that I liked them and I wanted to date them, and I wanted to get to know them better with the idea of having a romantic relationship with them. They didn't like that. They felt violated just knowing that I was thinking of them that way. Anyway, I met this woman online through mutual friends and on Facebook, and all that. There was a lot of flirtation went on, and that led ultimately to my meeting her. And I say I knew she had a bad reputation, but I have a bad reputation. So, I'd be hypocritical to hold that against her. And she indicated she was trying to change her life, and I value that. I respect that. I guess a lot of the things in her to do with her reputation, she did earn them. I earned a few of the ones of my reputation in the sense that I tended towards violence and whatnot. I grew up with violence, and I never really saw anything work but violence. Anyway, this girl, though, she had a brutal childhood. I also had a brutal childhood. But the difference is, in her childhood, she had brutality with no principles. You see, she was taught, basically, get the other guy before he gets you. Well, she was being brutalized. And that poor girl, she was brutalized. She was treated terribly. And it wasn't right, and my heart goes out to her for that. But that's what happens, and a lot of children in that era grew up that way, but it was never right. And of course, it damaged her in various ways, and she's still damaged in various ways, and she has trouble to overcome the training that she got, really, to be kind of a predatory person, to be somebody who will get you because she figures you're going to get her. She better get you first. In my case, I grew up with brutality. I grew up with violence. But it was weird, though, because it was principled violence, as funny as it sounds. I remember one time when I was about 7 years old, and my dad had warned me not to do something, and I did it anyway. And in those days, that was a beating, especially if you had been warned and you did it anyway. You were told, you don't do that. Don't do that. And you do it anyway. Well, you're going to get beat. And when you do it, if you get caught doing that, you're going to get beat. So my dad, anyway, he ordered me over to the kitchen table. He was sitting at the end of the table having a beer. And he let me know. He said, I know. I told you not to do that, and I know you did it. And when he told me not to do it, he said, if you do that, I'm going to beat you. He told me that. If you do that thing that I'm telling you not to do, I'm going to beat you. I went ahead and did it anyway. So my dad orders me over to the table. He says, I know what you did. He said, do you remember our conversation about that? And I said, yes, sir, I do. And he said, do you remember that I told you, if you do that thing, I'm going to beat you? And I said, yes, sir, I do. And he said, now, what would you think of me as a man if I didn't keep my word? Because I gave you my word, didn't I? And I said, yes, you did. And he said, well, you wouldn't think very highly of me if I didn't keep my word, would you? I said, well, no, sir, I guess I wouldn't. And at that moment, he got up on his feet and he proceeded to beat me. You see, and that's how I grew up. So I grew up with principled violence. My dad used to have a lot of talks with me. He used to say, work hard, pay your bills, keep your word. If you get into a fight with another man, don't initiate fights if you can help it. But if you have to fight, then fight. And fight hard. But if you get the other guy on the ground, then, don't kick the other man when he's down. Don't go putting your boots into his face or whatever when he's on the ground. Just kind of stand back. Don't turn your back on him. Never turn your back on somebody when you're in a fight. Just stand back and let him know that if he gets up, you put him back down. That's up to him then. If he gets up on his feet, then the fight's on again and you continue to fight. But as long as he stays on the ground, you leave him alone. You just let him know that you're there and you're watching, and if he stands up, you're going to put him down again. And he said that's how you do it. That's how you be a man, you know. And that's how you keep your word, you pay your bills, because he said, you know, in this world, in this life, material things and money and jobs and all relationships, all that stuff comes and goes. Nothing is really permanent. You know, you may have beautiful things, you may have a beautiful car and everything one day, and the next, and a month later you may have nothing. But you always have who you are, you always have your word. You know, and your word is important because you carry that with you whether you have anything or you don't. So he said, always keep your word. And so I was raised that way, and I was raised to be principled in my business dealings. I was raised to be principled even in a conflict situation, even in a fight with another man. I was raised to be principled. Now, here's the problem, though. Of course, I lost my strength in 1976 when I was used as a guinea pig for medical experiments, and that made me more of a target, and I actually did become a dirty fighter. I'm not proud of that because I was taught not to do that, but I was. I'd use a weapon. I'd pick up a club or anything that was laying around and use it against my opponent. But then you got to bear in mind, my opponent was pretty well always physically stronger than I was. So, I mean, it just evened things out is the way I look at it. But I still feel a certain amount of shame over the fact that I did that. But if I hadn't done that, I'd have been continuously hospitalized for getting beat. You know, so I really didn't. It put me in a bad position. I wish that I hadn't lost my strength, and I could have grown up to be the kind of a man that could just fight with his fists. And if you are that kind of a man, then generally people don't want to fight with you anyway, so you end up with fewer confrontations and fewer conflicts, and that would have been nice. And then maybe the rumors wouldn't have went around, and maybe things would have been better. Anyway, things between me and this woman that I met, they went south in a big way. You know, she tended not to keep her word. I really pushed her to keep her word in her dealings with me because that was really important to me. She took my pushing her to keep her word as abusive. Ended up, there was money involved. She took money from me, and she never paid the money back. She paid a little bit of it back, but she indicated that she wanted to pay it back, but then she never kept her word when it came to paying it back. So I think she wanted credit for paying it back, but without actually paying it back. She wanted to be able to say, well, I tried to pay it back, but that guy was such a piece of crap, I couldn't deal with him to pay it back. I think that's really what happened there. But anyway, the bottom line is, you can see how the way we're raised affects us. Because in my case, you know, I am the way I am in large part because of how I was raised. I'm not afraid of violence. I'll do violence if I need to. I'm not afraid to have violence done to me. I'll stand up even when it's against the odds that I'll ever win. I'll still stand up. And, you know, and I can also be pretty harsh. You know, I can be pretty tough to deal with if